Music is hardly the first thing that you would expect to hear when setting food in a hospital. However, in this section of the San Raffaele Teleton Institute for Gene Therapy in Milan, it's quite common, and it's just one of several unique features that you will find here. As you walk down the hallways, you will find photos and posters hanging on the walls of the patients that have been treated in these wards. They are all very young, girls and boys, mostly children, in some cases teenagers. You can still see the marks of the illnesses, the short hair, the fatigue in their eyes, but each and every one of them is also smiling. One of these is of a boy with long hair playing outside. It's a recent snapshot. He was treated here for a long time, and now he's cured. The nurse points at another picture. Is that of a young toddler. He is with a small girl and two adults. The child and the boy are the same person. The little girl is his older sister, Connie, and the two adults are their parents, Jan and Nicola. Unfortunately, Connie has passed away. She was taken by the same illness that Joe suffered from. Instead, Joe was healed thanks to the treatment that he received here at the San Raffaele Teleton Institute for Gene Therapy, where personalized medicine is used to fight against what we call rare illnesses, meaning illnesses that affect at the most one person every 2,000. I'm Giulia Bassetto, and this is the second season of The Science of You, a journey to discover the frontiers and benefits of personalized medicine. The Science of You is a podcast series by Cora Media in collaboration with the European Partnership for Personalized Medicine and coordinated by Fondazione Toscana Life Sciences and co-funded by the European Union's Horizon Europe Framework Programme for Research and Innovation. In these episodes, we will talk about Connie, Joe, of their family, and of how personalized gene therapy was involved in their lives. Their story begins in the north of England.
We have 3 children, Connie, Joseph and Miriam.
Our eldest child, Connie, started having some issues that we couldn't quite pinpoint what was going on.
Those were Nicola, Connie and Joe's mother, and Jan, their father. The family soon welcomed Miriam as well, who wasn't yet born when Connie started to show her first symptoms. In the beginning, she seems to have trouble walking. An uneven gait, she would often fall down and walked on her toes. Her diagnosis arrived late, as it often does for many children suffering from the same condition.
After a lot of toing and froing with the school and the hospital, Connie was diagnosed with metachromatic leukodystrophy. And because of her diagnosis...
Metachromatic leukodystrophy is one of the worst diagnoses a child can receive. It's a neurological disease caused by the accumulation of toxic substances, called sulfatides, in the nervous system. Normally, these substances are removed by an enzyme, but in the case of children born with a defective gene, that prevents the production of the necessarily cleansing substance. The sulfatides are left free to build up in nerve cells. These substances mainly damage the axons, which are the structures that transmit nerve signals between different neurons. If the axons are damaged and do not function properly, the neurons cannot send signals, and the nervous system deteriorates. The disease first appears with motor regression, and later cognitive functions also become impaired. The affected progressively lose the ability to walk, then also to talk and communicate. It's an illness that affects less than one child every 50,000.
Never heard of it before, didn't even know that something like this could actually even happen to a child. It was just an absolute horrifically traumatic time, really. I think, you almost, you can't believe what you've been told. And I think you keep waiting for a phone call from the clinicians, from the doctors, to say, we're really sorry, we've made a horrible mistake. The whole situation is just more than your brain can cope with, I think. Initially, we were told there was really no options available to us. We were basically sat down and told to go home with our children and make memories.
The diagnosis often arrives late because even general practitioners aren't able to recognize it. Most of them will go their entire careers without even coming across such a rare disease. And even those that do see it will probably only ever encounter it once. So it makes sense that in most cases, at least in the beginning, these doctors will divert towards more common diseases. And then there is the issue of treatment. Only a handful of companies even invest in such uncommon medications, and there are only a few centers that are even capable of treating these illnesses. At the time of Connie's diagnosis, the necessary therapies weren't even approved yet. The only hope was an experimental cure.
We just Googled metachromatic leukodystrophy, we Googled treatments and trials, and it was only through that process that we discovered that there was a trial happening and taking place in Milan, in Italy. And we reached out to the team there and also to Telethon directly. We reached out to Telethon directly and asked them for their help and their support. And
the center that Nicola is talking about is the San Raffaele Telethon Institute for Gene Therapy, established on the initiative of the Telethon Foundation and specialized in the research and innovative treatment of rare diseases, such as metachromatic leukodystrophy that was affecting Connie. The researchers here have developed a therapy which is capable of correcting the gene defect that causes toxic substances to build up in neurons. Essentially, they reprogram the cells of our organism, a medical frontier which is custom-made for each individual. This type of treatment is called gene therapy. Dr. Francesca Fumagalli is part of the team that developed it, and she follows the treatments.
We can now use an approved medication for gene therapy when the illness hasn't yet shown symptoms or when we can just about see the earliest of them. We need to prevent this substance from accumulating, to prevent damage and make sure that the nervous system doesn't take any more damage.
It is essential to act before the symptoms of the illness get worse, because damage to the nervous system can only be prevented but not repaired. When the symptoms are visible, it means that the neurons are too damaged to be corrected. And there is also a genetic aspect to consider. This illness is called autosomal recessive, in that it appears in children that have received two defective copies of the same gene, one from the mother and one from the father. This means that in every pregnancy we can expect a sort of genetic lottery. In 25% of cases, the child will be affected. In another 25%, they will be fine. And in the 50% of cases, the child will become an asymptomatic carrier, which means that they will receive only one altered copy of the gene, but without developing the illness themselves. For these reasons, once a child is diagnosed with metachromatic leukodystrophy, their siblings need to be tested as well, for they might have the same gene defect. And if the defect is corrected before the symptoms occur, then the illness can be cured.
In these years during our clinical trials, we were able to treat children who hadn't developed symptoms yet. They were all younger siblings of affected children. This means that when we made the diagnosis of those symptomatic children, it was already too late to do anything for them. However, we searched for the gene defect in their younger siblings, even newborns, or just a few months old. As soon as we found that they had the same gene defect, we were able to apply the gene therapy.
This is what happened to the family of Connie, Joe, Nicola, and Jan.
It became apparent reasonably quickly that unfortunately Connie, our eldest child, was too symptomatic to be treated, Joe was tested. So we discovered Joe had the condition around about 3 or 4 weeks after we were given the diagnosis for Connie. But Joe, because he was diagnosed pre-symptomatic because of Connie's diagnosis, they felt that he could be eligible for the trial.
Gene therapy works by reprogramming certain blood cells, which then start to produce the enzyme that can eliminate the toxic substances from the neurons. The enzyme is then released directly to the blood by the cells themselves, finally reaching the brain and the rest of the nervous system. Reprogramming cells means extracting stem cells from the bone marrow, modifying them at the genetic level in a lab, and then reintroducing them into the marrow, where they will get to work producing the missing enzyme.
It's a very difficult process, which allows us to pinpoint at which stage the illness is, if it's already progressed too far, or if we're still in time, and also if the patient's organism can withstand such an impactful and taxing therapy. We need to clear out the old cells to make room for the new ones. That's because the blood stem cells, the mother cells that create all the blood cells, need to find their own space, their niche, their habitat in the bone marrow. The bone marrow sits inside some of the bones, and when we infuse the new cells, there has to be space for them to settle in, to grow. So, just before infusing the new ones, we need to remove the old ones. Otherwise, the old cells would just go on living, holding on to their place, and they wouldn't allow the new ones to take over. And so children need to go through chemotherapy, where we get rid of all the old cells, and especially a certain group of white blood cells that we absolutely need to take away.
This is extremely hard on the patients, who are children in their early years of life, teenagers at the very latest. And it is just as difficult for the families because it requires great effort and everything happens so fast.
We went back to Italy with Connie and Joe, and Joe had to carry out a baseline assessment, and that was when he had his central line fitted, which is the tube basically that gets fitted in his chest, where they would take medicine, or they would inject sort of the medicine, and they would take bloods and things like that. And it was at that point we were sort of sent home again for a week, because it all happened so quickly. We actually only got the phone call on the Monday, and it was, how quickly can you get here? That was on the Monday, and we were there by the Wednesday. So it was just a couple of days after this phone call. So they did all these tests and fitted the central line, and then we were allowed to come back to the UK just to collect anything we needed, lock the house up, because at that point, once we returned to Italy a week later, we knew we were going to be there for quite a while.
The first steps of therapy have heavy side effects, which require great care.
We switch off their immune systems for a few days or weeks. We get rid of the red blood cells, and we use transfusions to bring them back. We eliminate all of their platelets, which is what clots the blood. So, we need to protect them from any sort of infection, because they don't have any white blood cells, and so even the smallest of germs, which for anyone else would be harmless, to them can be fatal, or at the very least debilitating. So this takes a few weeks of extreme hospital care in a special section of the transplant unit, where they receive every attention.
The children need to be isolated for their own protection.
The children stay in sterile rooms with the required airflow.
This is Mara Sangalli, a research nurse at the Telethon Center of the San Raffaele Hospital in Milan.
In any case, they're always close to their parents. but visits are limited, and all members of staff that are in contact with the mother and child need to follow strict procedures. They need to wear a hospital gown and cap and wash their hands. This is a very demanding period for research nurses and the personnel, of course, but also for the family itself, because the immune system of the child has been completely erased and they are now extremely vulnerable to infection.
The sterile room that Mara mentioned is a hospital room, which has been made as inviting as possible for the eyes of a young child. It's bright, with colored walls and with a large window. There is also room for a parent to spend time with their children and help them in little everyday things. This is what happened in the case of Joe and his family.
I think that gave me a real realisation of what Joe was going through, because even after 3 or 4 days of being in that room without being able to leave it, when I got out, all I wanted to do was walk in the countryside. I just needed to. Well, it's a very strange feeling being completely cooped into one very small room for such a long period of time, knowing you could not go outside of that room at all. So, yeah, it was a challenge.
Consider that a small child is suddenly dealing with drip feeds and medical tubes. They have to avoid putting anything dangerous in their mouth. They have to be able to play but can't put themselves in danger. For this, an adult must absolutely be present. Let's also consider that these families show up with the hope of doing something for the brother or older sister, and then also have to take care of younger children who haven't shown signs of the illness yet.
Nicola spent the days trying to keep Joe, a very active 4-year-old, amused and busy in a very small space where he wasn't allowed to play on the floor, and there were very limited options for what he could do. So she had the slight mental challenge of actually having to think of things to keep him amused and active. And I had the slightly less daunting challenge of just not sleeping very much.
So he started on the chemotherapy on day 1, and he had day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4 were all chemo days. So they were the days he had chemo. On the 5th day, he had his modified cells put back.
Cure is more than just pharmacological therapy. Here it becomes clear that cure is a targeted approach to the person, to their needs, and those of the family. Cure is also relationships. Here at the center we can find people practicing medical therapy, clownery, we can find colorful rooms and toys. There are therapists that attend to the families, and we also find research nurses whose goal is to manage every need the families have.
For example, if I see a mother who can't take the stress, I'll immediately inform our therapist for support. Or if I see that the child is having trouble moving, then I'll get in touch with the physical therapist so they can visit the child more often and help them in this regard. So during the chemotherapy, we're constantly monitoring our patients in every way. There are other serious issues, such as logistics and money. These may seem trivial, but these families come from far away. They may have to leave their jobs and lose their salaries.
As Jan recalls,
I got a telephone call from Nicola saying we needed to be in Milan the following day, or as close to as possible. And I told the people I work for that what was happening, and they basically waved me off and said, come back when you're ready. For nearly 5 months after that day, I didn't go back to the office, and I couldn't. We had to focus on the children. We had to focus on what we were dealing with. We do know other people that we met in Milan were less fortunate, and they basically, the people they work for just said, okay, you go, but you've got no job. That's a horrendous position to be put in, because the thing we discovered quite quickly was everyone likes to go on holidays. This was most definitely not a holiday.
Therapy only works if everything comes together seamlessly. Families mustn't feel like they are on their own, because often the parents need to take care of two children. And in these cases, the situation of one of them can get worse before anyone even has the time to realize it.
Joe was in the hospital in isolation, but one of us had to be with Connie at all times as well. So we were juggling quite a lot, because Connie was starting to struggle quite significantly with things. By this point, she deteriorated very, very quickly.
Connie's illness proceeds swiftly and suddenly. This is one of the most precious things about methachromatic leukodystrophy.
There are some symptoms which are very faint and hard to see. The images start to show that something is wrong. Sometimes the doctors don't even believe it. They reassure the patients or wait a while. But sooner or later, the illness starts in earnest. And it can make you very angry, because the diagnosis is too late. When it finally arrives, it's too late to do anything about it.
As we said, the nervous system, the nerves themselves, the axon, and the damaged degenerated neurons cannot repair themselves, and they can't reform either.
La malattia va avanti così velocemente.
In some cases, the illness is so quick that even while we're treating it, the sickness continues. And so by the time our therapy starts working, we're already at such a point that the illness makes it all in vain. And it's hard for us to tell the families that there's nothing we can do, because the children seem to be more or less fine. And then we tell them that it's already too late. It's too late, because by the time the therapy starts working, the illness will have gone too far.
Connie passed away shortly after the cures began. Tragically, she had been diagnosed too late, and it was all the family could do to stay by her side, making her final days as joyful as could possibly be. Joe, on the other hand, was able to make it. He completed his therapy with the Telethon Foundation, and today he is a lively teenager who just has to follow regular checkups to make sure that everything is fine.
The actual follow-up was 10 years post-transplant, which is kind of where we're at now. So that was in terms of the treatment. They were actually following Joe to find out more information about how the treatment had gone.
We can see it from his picture on the wall, along with those of the other children. It is the snapshot of a happy boy, smiling and jumping full of energy. There is also a drawing signed by Miriam, the youngest sister of Connie and Joe. There is a family with a mother, father, and 3 children: Miriam, Joe, and Connie.
She only ever knew Connie in a bed, in a poorly state. She was obviously aware when Connie passed away. She was there. She saw the grief we went through as a family. But she also she has a strange connection with Joe, because she understands and she can be very sympathetic.
The personalized approach, the gene therapy that saved Joe, is today officially recognized. But more can still be done for children affected by methachromatic leukodystrophy. Today we have screening tests which, however, are available only in very few settings. So the illness can be recognized early in all newborns without having to wait for the symptoms to appear when it may be already too late.
So at the moment in the UK, there is no newborn screening for MLD. Now, obviously, we can see the benefits. We see every day when Joe gets up and goes to school and is just living a very normal life. And we also know what happens when that treatment isn't there and isn't available to these children. So that's something that we're really passionate about now. Something we're campaigning for actively is to get screening on the UK newborn screening list.
For this reason, I will leave the conclusion of this episode to Dr. Fumagalli.
My hope is for all children who are born from now on to be diagnosed at birth, because I can't take seeing children who can't be saved any longer. This is just something that I can't bear anymore.
The second season of The Science of You is a Cora Media podcast, supported by the European Partnership for Personalized Medicine, coordinated by Fondazione Toscana Life Sciences, and co-funded by the European Union's Horizon Europe Research and Innovation Programme. The podcast is hosted by me, Giulia Bassetto, and written by Simone Clemente. The editorial curation is by Graziano Nani. Post-production and sound design are done by Matteo Zullo. The project manager is Anna Maria Renda. The producer is Martina Conte. Post-production coordination is by Matteo Scelsa. The graphic project is by Rebecca Grassi.